This was developed by an algorithm we call upper long algorithm. We use it to explain what happened. For example, when marine environment is polluted by crude oil. So this red substance are the crude oil, and all other things that you see dot, 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 it's representing different biodiversity. Some of them in form of plants, some in form of animals, of different coloration and all sort of things. So just to show us what happened, for example, when there is spillage, for example, in Niger Delta and other places, what happened as the oil spread across the land? How does it affect the marine ecosystem there? So in marine ecosystem, we normally consider majorly two types of models, which is classified as hydrodynamics model and ecosystem model. For hydrodynamic model, what we normally do is to consider meteorological condition and open boundary condition and river condition for us to develop model. And such type of models are usually those models you find in fluid dynamics, because in the marine environment, there is movement of fluid within the environment. So for example, if the water is polluted with crude oil, certainly the water will be transporting the crude oil. If the water is polluted by chemical substance, it is transported within it. And dissolved nutrients for the marine ecosystem are also transported by water. So therefore, we need models on transport system. We need models to take note of the water level, the current velocity of the water temperature, and then the salinity and water density and turbulence in a case where the environment is, the flow of the water is turbulent. So all these type of models are usually, there's those models we found in fluid dynamics like Navier-Stokes equation and different kind of equations that are in fluid dynamics, because they are very useful because you are within the marine environment, so there is flow within the fluid system. So we need to develop a lot of models in this direction. Like for example, if crude oil is to be pumped from the bottom of the ocean, for example, so you have to have models from fluid dynamics that you can use to study the hydrodynamics nature of the environment. Then from there, we move on to the ecosystem model. So this ecosystem model is talking about those animals and plants that are within the ecosystem, and then their interrelationship. So we can couple these two models together to see the behavior of this animal in relation to change within the environment, which the change, a clue can be got from the hydrodynamics model. So we couple them to have hydrodynamic ecosystem model. And that's the two of them, we can use it to really study the behavior of the animal. But we can as well use each one of them independent of each other to study. If we are using this thing, then we are looking at those physical characteristics within the marine environment. And if we are using this, we will be interested in the organisms that are within the environment. The organisms like phytoplanktons, which are the seaweeds. They are the plants within the animal environment, within the marine environment. They have the same characteristic like plant on the land. They produce their food through photosynthesis. And usually, they are usually found at the surface of the water so that they can have exposure to sunlight for photosynthesis. Zooplanktons are small animals. They feed on phytoplanktons and other small animals. And here we'll be interested in effect of nutrients effect of oxygen, because oxygen is really necessary for survival. And then we also have other marine organisms called femto, bacteria, viruses, and so many other things. If we are able to study some of these organisms very well, some of them can help as maybe nutrients, for example, because these are plants, some of them may be very rich in chemicals that human beings can use for medical purpose and other sort of things. And some can also be useful to give us information about what is happening within the ecosystem in the marine environment. Carbon flux. The carbon flux, we have carbon flux, we have other problem of studying the carbon flux within the ecosystem. We have other problem of circulation of nutrients in the aquatic environment. We'll do some model to see how nutrients are circulated. Other things are surrogate biomass model. Scientists have discovered that from biomass, you can generate electricity. So here, some kind of renewable energy can be generated from biomass. So we need to study them to really see how electricity can be produced and so many other things from the biomass. We also have carbon storage and export flows, all those things, and food web model. We have biomass transfer, we have multi-species dynamics, and also we have interaction and diffusion within the ecosystem. Now, what we can see here in this picture is a sea that is polluted by crude oil. This is crude oil that came because of onshore activity. So we have one of the simplest study is to study zooplankton and phytoplankton and fish population. So we are considering a simple environment that involves three populations. But you know that in the marine ecosystem, you can have so many organisms that are within the environment. But first, we want to look at a population that involves three of the organisms within the ecosystem and see what happened to them. So we have zooplankton and we have phytoplankton and fish. Phytoplanktons are plants. Zooplankton are small animals. So zooplankton feed on phytoplankton, and fish also feed on zooplankton. So we have relationship in food web in this context. So we have this type of model which is given by this. This parameter is the rate at which phytoplankton produce. And all these parameters here, we can estimate them using maybe statistical method and also kind of way, or we can calibrate the model using what we call inverse method, and many ways to calibrate the parameter. Here we are considering the same model when the growth rate is a constant. But in reality, this growth rate depends on the temperature of the water. So in this second case, it's temperature dependent. So we want to see how the population of the organism respond to temperature within the environment. And this factor here account for the pollution effect within the environment. And that pollution effect can be estimated using some hydrodynamic models. That means you can use the hydrodynamic model from fluid dynamics to quantify the behavior of the pollutant within the environment. And when you have a closed form solution to it, you can couple it with this equation. And then from there, we can begin to study the behavior of the organism. That is, each of the organisms with respect to change within the environment as a result of pollution, which is this factor characterizing. So those are simple models. We also have other models that you can use to study the characteristics of the organism within the environment using some stochastic model. The other model we consider here, the first model we consider here is from ODE model to model it. And this model can go up to even 20 variables. All you need to do is to study each of the organisms. How are they coupled together, and to able to come up with models. In modeling, there are different kind of models, like Volterra-Leclerc model, which is the classical model which we use to study pre-predator model. So this is an example of predator-prey model, but coupled together. So it's a model that is developed from ecosystem model and hydrodynamic model, because the hydrodynamics takes care of the effects of the transportation of chemicals within the environment. And then we now want to see how does the chemicals now affect the growth of this organism, and how does the organism respond to the stimulus. Like here, where there is a high deposit of crude oil, will the organism survive under this environment, or they need to migrate? So this is the essence of this research. So we can also study the temperature of the marine ecosystem. This is the world temperature as related to the water. I mean, related to the ocean and sea. So from each of the environment, we can know which area a particular species of organism can survive better, and which other area particular species of organism cannot survive very well. So we have a model which is stochastic model for diversity. If you look at it, it looks very simple, but I can tell you that the model is not a very simple one, because F1 here is represented by this feeding function. We call it feeding function. This here is called resting time. So here we are considering the effect of search and capture by the predators. When a predator search for its prey and capture, so those things are included. So therefore, X of T here symbolizes the population of zooplankton at time T. And then this here is the noise. We use white noise to do the model. But we can as well look for some kind of stochastic error variable that will work well here. Something like Brownian motion and all those sort of things, which account for some error as a result of the pollution within the environment. And then we have to model this to study, to get the equilibrium equation. That means if you set the error to be equal to 0 first, for us to solve this model in stochastic form, generally it's difficult. So what we do is consider the deterministic part of it. This part here is the deterministic part. When you set the error here equals to 0, then we do some linearization process to be able to study the model, because the model is in a very complex non-linear form. And non-linear form generally is very difficult for us to find the solution to this complex non-linear equation here, stochastic equation within the ecosystem. These are the variables that are there. We must know the velocity of the fish that is to attack the zooplankton, and the velocity at which zooplankton try to run away from the organism. And we have something like search radius of the fish. Within what radius can the fish search for the animal to be able to get it? And we also have escape radius, wherein the prey has to escape from the animal in order not to be captured. So we have, for that model, there is some condition that must be satisfied for the model to actually have solution. These are some conditions. But one of the basic assumptions we normally do when we are doing model is that the problem is well posed. That means that the solution of the model exists and it is continuously depend on the initial data. In other words, from the initial data, we can actually find the solution. How does it evolve from the initial data to the final state for which the solution is sought? So these are some of the conditions that must be satisfied for that stochastic model to actually have solution. Otherwise, we also have another model, which is of spatial dynamic model of marine environment. So we are talking of spatial, temporal. Temporal is talking about the evolution of the population of the species with respect to time. And then it depends on the position of the organism at that particular time. That position is represented by X. The position of the organism at that time is represented by X. And these are parameters. This model is a nonlinear model also because of this. So this model is an example of reaction diffusion model. So this is the diffusion part of the model, and this is the reactant part that shows the population of the species. And this factor here is the pollutant function. So this problem can be solved in several ways. We can look at it as a typical PDE problem to be solved from PDE perspective, using all kind of possible methods to find solution to the model. Or we can look at the model as a typical control problem. Because of this variable here is the control variable. It's a control problem which we can look at a control problem that arises from partial differential equation. So in which case, we can talk about how we can optimize. We can talk about how do we optimize the control variable. That means, how do you control the effect of pollutant within the environment? Like in this picture, you see pollutant that come in form of plastic and all those things. So for us to really study the dynamics, and then from there, we can begin to see how does the species, are they reacting to the presence of the pollutant? And if it is chemicals, would they move away from the source where there is pollution? So that type of behavior is what we call chemostatic behavior. Also, respond to change in the environment is what is called in biology statism. So in the marine environment, there are a lot of statics problems that can be formulated. And we can also look for the equilibrium of this equation by simply set the right-hand side of the equation to be 0. But then, if you set the right-hand side of this equation to be 0, then it means that you are going to solve another differential equation, partial differential equation, for you to get P's, D, and P. So the easiest way normally we do is to assume that the diffusion is absent. So we can now have to solve this. And you will agree with me, sometimes it's not easy to find the solution direct. So this is where Maple becomes very important. So Maple has facility for solving system of equation, both linear and non-linear. It can give you the analytic solution to it, what we call symbolic solution. And also, you can also find numerical solution to them in Maple. And this equation also, we can transform it using different type of variable. And then after we get to a point, we can ask Maple to provide analytic solution to it. But you will agree with me, it's not easy. It's not a simple problem like that. Now we have general biodiversity model. This is an example of a couple local model, in which case this factor here takes care of the population of the organism, and this other factor takes care of the diffusion, and this here is the pollution function. As I told you, we can obtain the pollution, this pollution function, through machine learning if you have data from the ocean, which you can use to model this, or you can use some statistical means to model it if you have data, or you can obtain it from the hydrodynamic model to see how to get the solution of the hydrodynamic model, which is the what? The pollution function. And then we can now use this model to study the behavior of different organisms. We are considering different organisms from 1 up to n, where you have about n different organisms that are coupled together in the food web sense. And you want to study their behavior of all of them as a result of presence of pollution within the environment. And then I think this one we are able to actually generate solution and study the stability property of the organism. And then we notice that the organism exhibits some kind of oscillation within the environment. And what might have been responsible for it is because the organism have natural tendency to move away from pollutant source. And within the environment, some part of the environment supports the existence of the organism more than other, because the environment where there is depletion of oxygen, for the organism tend to move away from there. So these are some of the things we study. We also do some research to study the risks that are involved within the environment. That's within the marine ecosystem. We develop a risk assessment tools, which is this, which we can use to measure how the organisms are exposed to risks at different levels. So this, and also we have what is called equivalent environmental costs, for avoiding such risks. So that's a metrics, and we apply it to some data to get some results. So these are uh, zooplankton within the environment. They are moving around. So from the model, we have to find numerical solution to the model. And from this model, the way it comes down like this, shows that the system is stiff. It's a C system. So that's what we are saying, that the model of zooplankton and phytoplankton is a stiff system. And in mathematics, when you have something like this, we say that the organisms are persistent. You know, the population is managing to survive until eventually it gets to extinction. So this is a situation of persistence of the organism, which eventually leads to extinction. We also observe that within the ecosystem, the animal coexists. So each of their population is increasing. Despite the fact that the other species are feeding on the lower species. But the others, as they are feeding on them, they are producing more offspring so that they will not go into extinction. So we have situations that allow coexistence of the species. We have situation of persistence of species. As I told you, the species will gradually manage to survive in the environment until they die off because of the stimulus within the environment. So, in order to simulate this model, what we did was that we have to use Maple code. Although the Maple code that we use is so bulky, because under that Maple, there are many things that have to be considered. One, the equilibrium equation. We have to determine the equilibrium, or what we call bionic equilibrium of the system. Then we also have other equilibrium, we call it economic equilibrium. And we also have other problems that has to do with harvesting within the system. That means we have a case where there is harvesting, a case of harvesting within the system. Here we have a model here that involves presence of pollutants. We can have a situation where this organism, there is harvest. In other words, like activities of human being, for example, that involve fishing in the ocean. So as we are fishing, their population is supposed to be reducing. And for the organism to be able to survive so that they will not go into extinction, they have to reproduce their offspring at a rate that is by far more than what you can get from harvesting. So you have problem, you can study this problem from harvesting point of view. And we can also look at other organisms like water icing. Water icing, for example, I remember in my PhD thesis, there was a model that I developed of water icing and was published in a journal in England. So water icing and many, many other sort of organisms that are within the marine ecosystem. So with Maple, we are able to find the parameter. This is a simple case of constant parameter. But in the real life situation, if you have data, we can use some statistical method like Gatch method and all those sort of things, and regression analysis and other things, to be able to estimate the parameters, which will involve function of time or function of x, and then put it in. So this model, like this one now, we can easily solve it because it's linear and because of the parameters are constant. But then we want to use numerical methods in Maple to solve it. So this is the multiple code we use. Then you go on, you use the solver, PDE solver, with the initial condition that is imposed, and then we are using numerical method. Here we are not specifying the method, but sometimes we can specify what type of the numerical method we want. And then the time range is between 0 and 1. So when you enter it in, you have this, shows that yes, it has accepted it. Then now we want to plot the solution at t equal to 1/8, and yeah, we are using numerical point of 100. It's better to use higher one, but when I use higher points, we discover that the model has some singularity at a point, so the solution cannot be continue beyond that point. So, but when we allow 100 points, the solution of the model when t is 1/8, we plot the graph as red. Then the solution of the model, or the graph of the solution of the model when t is 1/4, we plotted it as blue. Then when t is half, we plotted it as green. And then we now ask Maple to display the three graphs. That is, at time t is 1/8, at t is 1/4, at t is half. So we use this code to say display. So, and then I put it on hold on here so that it will not plot it. And then I want to arrange the solution in array form, 1×2 array. I call the first array the solution of this 1/8, which is that. The second array, the solution of this, which is this. And in that case, these are some of the solutions that are generated from different type of patches. And you see that the solution is oscillating somehow. The first question one may ask, is it as a result of the method we use? I can say confidently not because of the method, but it's a result of the way the population of the animals are fluctuating. Because within the environment, as some of the animals are dying, some new ones are given, are produced to replace those ones. So you have the population going up and down, and so on like that within the patches. So they also have the population going up and down. And the reason again is that within the patches, there are some places are rich in oxygen, so the organism, they tend to stay within such place. An area where there is no sufficient sufficient oxygen, they tend to migrate away from that. So this can be responsible to why the solution is going up and down and so on like that. Like what we call in statistics, mean reversing type of behavior of the organism within the parts. So the population will always fluctuate within the environment because of the presence of pollutants. Because the organism have to migrate, organisms have to run away from their predators, organisms have to produce new offspring to be able to balance their population. If not so, they will go into extinction. So this is three-dimensional view of the model. So our conclusion is that the model consider as temporal, spatial, prey-predator models. Investigation is made on the temperature-dependent growth for zooplankton and plankton and fish population using some functional response. The condition for coexistence were investigated. Condition for persistence, as I've shown you in the graph, was also investigated. And we also investigate what we call sector stability. Within some isolated sector within the environment and their populations stable within that. And also, we also look at cases like extinction, and then we obtain results. We also go in for vertical simulation of the vertical patches for the model in the given polluted environment and also in non-polluted environment. Formation of patches are found to oscillate down the ocean as the depth increases with corresponding oxygen depreciation. So other problems are on the drilling and transportation of oil offshore and associated pollution in the environment. In fact, there is a lot of funds available for research by oil company because many countries now, they are going to exploration within the ocean. Like, I think a couple of months ago, Turkey and Greece, they were having problem on the drilling of oil in the Atlantic and so on like that. And then we have Brazil also. They are exploring the possibility of drilling oil within the ocean because they found that the deposit of crude oil within the ocean is by far 7 times what Saudi Arabia deserve has. So there are other problems of terrorism and climate change because of the dynamic process within the ocean. So we have models on El Nino and Elana, which govern the climate change. And climate change actually has an effect on the marine environment. Like, the atmosphere is full of carbon dioxide, and when there is rain, and then sulfur dioxide in the air, nitrogen oxide in the air, when there is rain, they become acid and they run into the sea. So this increase the pH level within the ocean level, thereby making the water to be acidic. And you know, living organisms, their system do not work well in an acidic environment, but our system works far better in a basic environment. So for that reason, we need to do some research to look at the effects of the pH change within the marine ecosystem, and also how does it affect the life of the organism. And you know, rain is take their source from the trade winds that pass through the ocean and up to the land. So we need to study the role phytoplankton play as far as climate change is concerned, and also sustainability problem about the environment. So we also have modeling of biodiversity resources and all those sort of things. Many researchers can do a lot of work in that area because mathematical biology has the highest area of research potential. The other potentials are in the area of engineering. So that's where things like mining of crude oil become very important, but engineering is very, very important. There are other research also, like ship, design of ship customized to given marine environment. Like a couple of years, Russia developed a ship that can crack ice cracker ship, so that they can use such type of ship in the Arctic region and other places. So these are some of the things we need to study. We need to study the dynamics of the ocean and the atmosphere, and also the dynamics of the ice at the polar region, and what type of interaction and how did they lead to climate change and all those sort of stuff. References. We also have attached Maple code. You know, the model we consider the stochastic model. I told you earlier that we have to convert it to deterministic form. And then because the non-linearity nature of the model, so we linearize it and get the Jacobian and other things. So we have to study the property of the eigenvalues and all those sort of stuff. That same model also, we can also use Lyapunov stability method, both for ordinary differential equation model that we presented and PDE. But I bet it with you, you need to be a very good mathematician to be able to use it effectively. So inside Maple, we make use of the library, which we call linear algebra. So we say with linear algebra. We also need the library, which is called DE tools. This one is for solving problems in differential equation. This one is for solving problems that has to do with linear algebra, matrices, and all those sort of stuff. And then we also need a plotter facility. So these are the three resources we deploy here to do the model. After we linearize the model, we found that the matrix, companion matrix, is given by this. So when you enter it in, you get this. And then imposing some condition on the parameters. So imposing condition on the parameters. We compute the eigenvalues, the eigenfunctions using the code, what we call with student linear algebra facility Maple, and then with the information level of 1. And then we can compute the characteristic polynomial using this command in Maple for the matrix, which is given here, because we said matrix A, which is given by this with respect to X. So from there, we get eigenplot of C using this. And this is what we have. The eigenvalues for the matrix, this matrix is given to be this with multiplicity 1. Another, and the eigenvector also given with multiplicity that, an eigenvector. So this is that. So we can plot again, go ahead for this matrix. So what happened is that the code involves so many things, so I have to remove some things just to show the essential one. But if anybody wants the code, I can give it to you. Input the Maple code to generate matrix plots for various gap lengths. So we have what is called matrix plot facility, and then it will generate some, what is it called? Histogram in box form, and so on and so forth. So, and this one using this color to have that. So we can also generate random number, because we said that the process is governed by white noise. So how do generate white noise? So we use with statistics, because statistics allow us to generate random number. So we have the random number. This one here, we assume that the random number is a normal distribution with mean 1 and parameter 1. I mean, with mean 0 and standard deviation 1. So we generate the random number and you have something like this. So we cannot generate the matrix because we are iterating the solution with power matrix. So from power matrix, since we have the matrix, we get our P1. When n is equal to 1, you get your P1 first iteration from the initial condition here. Next, second iteration, which is A squared, you get this. Third iteration, which is 8 cubed, and so on and so forth. So from there, we're able to generate the solution of the matrix. These are solutions. These iterative solution to the model. and so on and so forth. And then we'll do some playing around and many other things. I think that is that. That. So that. That's that. Hello? 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 Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, sir. Sir, are you done with your lecture?
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. That is a wonderful presentation. That is very, very good. It means there is a lot of provision for in the modeling area of the mathematics. If you want to learn more about mathematical modeling related with math, you can reach out to our father. He's going to take you more on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to ask if you have one or two questions to ask. If you have any question to ask, let us kindly signify. Let us use the symbol of raising our hand if you have any question to ask from the audience. Okay, I think we have two. We have two hands. Okay, I'm going to the admin. Please help me to unmute Dr. Adewale Rufai to ask his question. Host, please unmute Dr. Rufai, Adewale Rufai. I don't think the host is with us here. Please help me to unmute Dr. Rufai. Dr. Rufai, you can unmute yourself now.
Okay.
Ask your question.
Thank you, Prof, for your insightful presentation.
Yeah.
My question is on the having to linearize non-linearity. Is it in all cases that we have to linearize? Because some problems may involve classification of and so on, other modeling equations. So I want to know whether it linearize most of these non-linear properties.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. For you to linearize, there are some basic property that must be satisfied. I think I gave that property earlier.
Okay, sir.
And that property must be satisfied. First of all, the companion matrix, when you after linearization, must be bounded. That's one of the conditions. And then the error term must be as small as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, one, two, you can ask question.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Prof.
Yeah.
My name is Euteria. I'm from University of Port Harcourt.
Okay.
The aspect of the research you handled today is very, very exciting.
Yes, yes.
And the way you handled it is you finished everything. I am so excited about your presentation.
Yeah.
I did an aspect of marine research in my PhD program.
Yeah.
So my analysis, I use MATLAB.
Okay.
The
Okay.
difference is then there are certain things I was supposed to have done, or aspects of research or open questions I am supposed to have answered. But I needed more input from maybe some other person or a different application to be able to see whether my analysis, meets what exactly is supposed to be before I can, take it out, to the public space.
Okay.
So with this elaborated presentation you have made,
Yeah.
and in fact, that was what prompted me to join this conference.
Yeah.
And I must commend the organizers, the way they picked, since Tuesday, I have joined the lectures from Professor Trump, Kalina, and I am so excited about what I have learned.
Yeah.
So now I am equipped because I was like incapacitated somehow.
Yeah.
I needed to investigate further on what I have done to be able to be bold enough to say, yes, this one beats what is supposed to be. But I don't have a lot of those applications that can help me, to check and cross-check and be able to say, yes, this is correct. Yes, I have done the thesis. In fact, I even developed a model in this marine problem.
Yeah.
But then, having done maybe check the normal things I'm supposed to check, and I was able to, I was assessed to be okay with it. But in me, I wasn't really satisfied yet. So this conference has exposed me, a lot to what I really need to get. I've kept quiet since Tuesday and I've assimilated a lot. I am so excited right now. It's just to meet up with one or two persons and then expose what I have and then see how I can get, a help, or even from Professor Trump's side, because I'm in an aspect of this area. When you are talking about mathematics and you are using statistics to analyze it, they will ask you whether you are doing statistics or you are doing mathematics. But do in modeling or mathematical sciences, like I have a background in mathematical sciences.
Yeah.
I was among the first set of M students. So that gave me an upper hand in understanding a way research should go. So, but then people around me, we don't think alike, and it has been a burden. So now with the exposure I have gotten from this, I think I can collaborate and make more meaningful contribution to knowledge. Yeah. I want to appreciate Professor Benjamin, and the organizers of this event. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
So I would like to have contact and collaborate with you people to further my investigative research in mathematics.
Yeah, thank you. Let me add one or two things.
Okay, sir.
You see, when you talk about MATLAB, mathematics lab is good when you are dealing with a problem on numerical methods. Something that has to do with numerical computation something that has to do with machine learning and all those sort of things. Maple
Yes.
has advantage when it comes to symbolic computation. So there's no any area of mathematics that you cannot use Maple on. Even abstract algebra, it's also you can use it to do analysis. So when you are dealing with problem of you want analytic or symbolic solution, I think Maple is the best tools you can use. But when you are dealing with something you want numerical solution and other things, MATLAB is the king in that area.
Yes, that's MATLAB.
You need to know. Yes, yeah. So you need to know. Like I show you a case of simulation of oil in the what is it called in the ocean.
Yes.
That thing was designed by MATLAB, but all other things were Maple because you need to know which facility to use and so on. You see, where they may ask you, are you a mathematician or a statistician? You see, in this area, it is when we are estimating parameters that we can use statistical tools. But when we are solving the problem, because the problem is differential equation, so you have to use your knowledge of differential equation as a mathematician to solve it for them to say, yes, this is a mathematics work. You understand? Because statisticians are interested in data.
But even
only.
after doing the mathematics of the differential equations, and the properties involved, when you present your results and you mention one or two things that are maybe error, they'll think error you are estimating is not in mathematics, you are doing it from statistics.
No, you can talk of error because if you are using numerical method, for example, every numerical analyst must be interested in error analysis. Because numerical method means approximation to exact solution. So you want to know how close your approximated solution is to the new method. So once you are doing elimination, you can always do the error analysis from numerical perspective. Are you with me?
Yeah.
But the other statistical one, they are doing it from simulation perspective. Take note, I mentioned numerical simulation and simulation. Numerical simulation means you are using numerical method to solve it. But normal simulation is the same thing like machine learning and others. So in that area, when you train the data, you have to test the training equation, whether it is accurate or not. That is why you have to find the error. You understand? Error for testing. Because that shows the power of the simulation. Yes. So you need to, because like what Professor Trump said, you are dealing with machine learning. You have data. You have to classify the data into two. One data for training the data to get the training or the model which you will use. And then the second data to test the model for accuracy. So and you have to use some kind of estimator to do that. And those are the estimator. Yes.
So,
and that one is similar to statistics because the all work of statistics is to analyze data. They deal with data. We will deal with equation and other mathematics. So if you have a work that is statistical, it means it has to do with data, mostly analysis of data. But if it's mathematics, you have to show rigorous things about mathematics, like mathematical concept must be there. Whether you are talking of stability, oscillation, bifurcation, all those sort of things, that shows that it is mathematics. Yes, oscillation, and so different type of phenomenon that are in mathematics. That shows that it's mathematics. So take note of that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Someone is asking if you can make the slide.
I've already submitted it to the editor-in-chief already.
Okay, sir.
I think he will make it available for you people. And if
Okay,
there
no
are
problem, sir.
any assistance you want, you can get in touch with me.
Okay, sir. Now, sir, question before we go is
Yeah.
on this model. I
Yeah.
noticed that most of the work we usually do is functional modeling based on our analysis. But there are some research work that you are going to do that they are going to be considering the domain of the solution. That is, when your model fall into, let's say, PDE,
Yes.
they believe the solution should be in the Sobolev space, in which you are going to do some metric space analysis and so on. I just want to, what is the correlation between that computational work and the other one when it comes to analysis, sir?
The analysis, whether you are working in Banach space or in Sobolev space or Hilbert space, what really matters is how do you use your analysis very well. Are you with me? The method you are using. For example, if you are to work in Sobolev space, the first thing, that means you are using operator theory. So, and in operator theory,
Yes.
you want to know whether the operator equation is solvable or not. So,
Okay.
for you to know whether it's solvable, you have to use theorems for fixed point, finding fixed point of the operator. There are different type of them. Banach's fixed point theorem, Banach Cassiopoly, then you can Lax milligram, and so many of them, which you can use to establish solvability, depending on the nature
Okay.
of the problem. So
Oh,
that's it. So
okay.
or you it can be in Banach space. For example, if you are dealing with Euclidean, your problem is from Euclidean space. Rn is a Banach space, so it's a Banach space problem. You can establish the existence in that, and some problem you can establish it from Sobolev space. Most especially problems that are from PDE, majority usually come from Sobolev space, or problem that involve integral equations, usually they come from Sobolev space, or problem that has to do with operators, infinite dimensional problem. So they go into Sobolev space because you need a very strong uh, analytic tools to analyze it. Is that okay? So that's it. So
Oh,
every method you use, even when we are talking about numerical solution, there are some element of LP spaces we use, like L2, which is the most general one. You use it. Some are in stable space. I have a paper on modeling of heat, and it was done in Sobolev space. Anytime you need it, I can send you a copy. And there is one also we published with Dr. Stella. She's here this year, which is on mathematics of finance. We established the existence from Sobolev's perspective. So depending on the problem you are solving, the most important thing, the analysis must be done. If you are talking about convergence, you want to know at which space is it convergent, and what is the topology you are using, and all those sort of metrics you use to be able to arrive at your analysis. Those things are really very important for mathematicians.